for future use. And that way, if you do wish to go back and review this and the other lessons, they are available on the student page. Just need to sign in and go from there. If you have difficulty or questions with this, please contact the Church of Light office and they can help get you in accordingly. So today we're doing book 9. Now, book 9, I think, is one of the pivotal books. Next month is book 10, part 1. It's divided into 2 sections, so that'll be over a period of 2 months. And this gets into the process of casting a chart, all of the information. But before that, book 9 is very pivotal in understanding why we're doing what we're doing and also how best to prepare yourself. So we've just kind of gone through all that information. Setting intention is the overall theme of the book that we're going to be covering today. And if you get nothing else out of today, please, please, please remember that for you, prior to casting a chart, prior to reading a series of tarot cards, prior to your meditation, setting an intent for both short-term and long-term will drive not only the outcome, but also help you to make use of the information that you obtain within the tarot cards, within your meditation, within casting a chart. Science has shown us that we horribly overestimate what can be accomplished within 1 year's period of time. This is one of the fundamental reasons that New Year's resolutions are more often than not unsuccessful. Conversely, we terribly underestimate what can be accomplished within a longer term, particularly in the 3 to 5 year time frame. Even in 2 years, it's been shown that individuals will underestimate what can be accomplished. And so I'm going to challenge you today to begin the process. If you don't journal, this may be an excellent opportunity to begin that process, but to start looking at what you want your life to be. What is the various things that you wish to accomplish? What type of relationships do you want to have? What type of person is your ideal and that you're moving toward? As you do these and set it in writing to reflect back onto and to examine, this gives you additional clarity of thought. And over a period of time, I have found that my ideals and my goals have changed. Now, have they changed radically? Not really, but that the details have been altered. Now, it's also important to note this is not to set how this will be accomplished, but to set what you're looking to do. The how is the variable and can change on the path that you may take to get there. I've also found that when I set my intention, that it's amazing how processes come together, how I am introduced or run into people that I really need to meet, how life unfolds before me in a very sometimes unanticipated way. And that's a call to action. You, I, all of us are required to take that first step of setting some understanding of what it is we want. And another important aspect that I've found is that once we get outside of ourselves and we look to incorporate giving back to the world, giving back to the ministry of the Church of Light, of whatever is feeding you and encouraging you and actively participating in those events and those opportunities also can help define and help refine what is going to unfold before you. As you put this into writing, as opportunities then come up and come before you, referring back to what that intention has been stated on paper can help you also make decisions. It's not about whether an opportunity is positive or negative. It's more about, does it help you get to where you believe you want to arrive? And that may mean that you turn down what otherwise may be a very positive opportunity, but you see it not helping you to accomplish. So as we go through these materials, and there's some real fundamental and, shall we say, foundational information that is related within Book 9. And as we go forward into how to cast a chart and interpret the chart, do not lose sight in that it is your future and your destiny is still in your hands. Nothing is set in stone. That there are influences and forces that are at play, but that does not mean that we do not have the tools to be able to alter those paths, to alter and influence those forces, and ultimately to arrive at that destination. It is a marathon. Now, if you have any doubt about the power of intention, there is a book written some years ago by Lynn Taggart called The Power of Intention, where about 20 years ago, she teamed with a psychologist and others to be able to run systematic experimentation on just how powerful intention is and just how much influence it can have in an individual and in a group's life. As more than one person comes together with the same intention, a few people can alter what she says is a course of history, and I honestly don't doubt it, but certainly can have an impact on it. So Lynn McTaggart is the name of the author. It is just a book if you have any doubts or wish to read more about the power of intention. But just know that Zane had this as an underlying precept as we go forward in this book. Okay, if you have any questions, we'll talk about that at the Q&A session. But let's get into this. Chapter 1, serial lesson number 95. And again, your page numbers may not coincide with what I show. I am using the Green Book. And so if you do have the Green Student Manual, that's where I'm getting the page numbers. We are both challenged and, if you will, encouraged and not required, but all but, to apply right thinking to be able to change ourselves and to change our situation. Now, what in the world does it mean by right thinking? Zane actually defines that on page 6 and 7, and that is by direction or redirection of the powerful desires that are in our lives. That are the narrative desires, the reproductive desires, and the desire for significance. And these have been covered in previous books. I would encourage you to do a search within, if you have the PDF version of the book, to be able to go back and look those up to reinforce. But I will tell you, of those three, the order that seems to be most powerful to least powerful, but still impactful, are the reproductive or sexual desires, the desire for significance, and the narrative desires. But with the sexual desires being the most powerful, as you can redirect and influence those and channel those desires into positive action, you can see a tremendous outcome. The desire for significance is not too far behind, and narrative desires are, if you will, the lesser of the impactful but still important ones to bear in mind. So what does being alive really mean? Within chapter 1, there is reference to a book that is available for free. It's in the public domain by Bose, who's an Indian doctor. And it was written in 1910, but still is a reference book that I have seen cited time and time again. And that is called The Response in the Living and the Non-Living. And in this book, he goes through and shows that the definition of life, as we have very narrowly defined it in most scientific endeavors, is really an error. That all matter, all existence is reactive and has the ability to interact with its environment. And as you read this book, he goes through experimentation that has been replicated many times and talks about how even what we consider innate objects, be it metal, be it ferrous or non-ferrous minerals, be it the earth itself, let alone plants and other animals and obviously other people, all of these represent aspects and forms of life that we interact with and that frankly we're interconnected with. It also references the importance and the power of material symbols. And in this, using conditioning energy, which he talks about, again, for probably the fourth or fifth time in these materials, of the vibratory power that's contained within the symbols, within crystals, within minerals, within both ferrous and non-ferrous metals, and how they can carry an energy and that they can be killed, which I found to be just a fascinating discussion of how the power and the life can be extinguished from what otherwise we consider to be innate objects. But this also, for other types of esoteric organizations, they will use the symbology of giving a medal that is worn or some type of collar that contains some symbology, and you're invested with that during part of the ceremony. In that, the powers and the symbolism is then imparted to you as a part of the life that is embedded within those objects itself. Also know that each of these items that you come in contact with, again, being the earth, being metals, being the plants, they are also aligned with the 12 astrological departments of the spiritual. And if you go back to the book in Spiritual Alchemy, you'll see more information about this. But this also probably is why so many people find great peace and benefit by gardening, by being very engaged with what's around them, or from using or holding a crystal, or from some other symbolic object, be it a religious object or something that you have given meaning for. The interaction with that object can both impart energy and life and enhancement to you. It's not magic. It's very explainable, but it is also very real. We also see that some items and some objects are conditioned by pain, and this is in pages 15 and 17 through 18. And I'll refer you back to this because this also may be the basis, though he makes just a hint at it, of curses that come, that an object or a place or a situation is cursed, not so much because of anything other than the experience that has been, if you will, embedded or has been imparted to this object, person, place, or thing, and that then it carries forward. There are ways of testing for this, and that will be discussed in some of the later books, and also for the healing or the curing of these situations, which again is something that is important to know, understand, and to use properly. So again, I encourage you to look up that book, Response in the Living and the Non-Living by Bose, that he cites in this chapter. and to read through that. It's a very fascinating read, and you'll find that the use of conditioning energy can have a strong impact on life. So in chapter 2, this gives us information, again, reinforcing that we're not locked into or predisposed to any situation or any event with a certain outcome. We have ability to not only influence, but to change. And if you look on page 25 and 26, you'll see that the various aspects that are related are each significant and impactful. And if you are maintaining that 3-ring notebook that I've talked about in each of in the previous classes, update this information within. Now, we will start talking about the power of these, because not every aspect, not every planet, not every, if you will, celestial body is to be taken equally. There's something that will be called astrodynes and cosmodynes, and we will talk about how to rank and how to understand that in the next 2 months, in the next 2 classes. So I encourage you to look. Also, on pages 29 and 26, we see the impact of thought elements. And this again ties back to intent. So in pages 29 to 36, there is significant information that needs not to be committed to memory, but needs to be committed to where you can find it and look it up and incorporate it into your practice. There's also the concept of conditioning energy and compounds. And as you look at spiritual alchemy, you'll see you'll see a very close tie between the two. And this is on pages 37 through 40. And again, I encourage you to look at these and to even have the book, Spiritual Alchemy, open in front of you so that you can cross-reference and then incorporate the materials that are listed here in course 9 with that's included in that course on spiritual alchemy. Chapter 3, serial lesson 97. Finding a mental antidote. The application of information here is critical. But remember that we work both on the physical plane and we work on the astral plane, so that actions and, if you will, the various cures that we're implementing have meaning at both levels. And on page 47 and 48 talks about these various compartments: power, domestic, intellectual, social, aggressive, which is interesting, religious, safety, individualistic, utopian, and universal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And what you're going to find is that these also tie to attributes of the various astral bodies. And by using, again, combining what we had within the spiritual alchemy with this information, especially pages 49 through 60, you're going to see that there is dramatic and dynamic information that can be applied as you understand the forces that are in play and utilizing them both on the physical and the astral levels. One really feeds the other, but with, again, the intention of saying that I am looking to impart and to cure and to heal and to change, not just on the physical level, but also on the astral level. You will find the most significance takes place. And again, I'm not taking the time to really go through and to identify each of these on an individual basis. If I did, we would probably spend most of the hour that we have just here on chapter 3. It's serial lesson number 97, again combined with the book, with of course Spiritual Alchemy, is a place to focus a great deal of your attention. This also will be reinforced in later courses, that you will find that it is brought back and referenced multiple times. This information also can go in and should go into your 3-ring notebook. Chapter 4, serial lesson 98 continues. Thought cells and thoughts themselves are not isolated events or occurrences. Now, what in the world does that mean? That means that every thought that we have, every action that we take, has impact both on the physical and the spiritual level. They are not isolated, but interconnected. Now, there was a scientific experiment done approximately 10 years ago when understanding of quantum physics not only had its heyday, which has continued to current, but almost 10 years ago, we saw the enlightenment that really took place because we had the tools to prove out what Einstein and others finally, what they said, and we had the experimental ability to be able to do it. The one pivotal experiment that really changed everything was the cloning of a photon. Now remember, the photon, that light really has the properties of a particle called a photon, as well as of a wave. They took that element, that photon, and they duplicated it, and they sent it. They sent these photons in opposite directions over fiber optics at the speed of light, just short of the speed of light, many miles away. And then they began experimenting on the one photon, and immediately, with no passage of time, and this is measured against an atomic clock, that there was an immediate and concurrent change in the other photon. Well, that means that the two photons, first of all, were in communication, even though they were physically separated by space, but that the information occurred at speeds that exceeded the speed of light, which in the laws of thermodynamics should be impossible. But on the quantum physics, the subatomic level, the speed of light is not applicable. And what it also, we found out, and what they now are formulating and testing the theory of, and you can read this in some of the current papers and journals, and it's just fascinating, is since the time of the Big Bang, that there has been this not seeable, as of yet, not visible threads that interconnect everything together. Meaning that we as people all are interconnected, that all of the minerals and metals, all of the substances of Earth are interconnected, and that there is a simultaneous, exceeding the speed of light connection, that space and time have no meaning. Now, if you think about this, this is very substantive and is a very critical item. Thoughts and concepts then are connected and impactful and able to change because of this, if you will, spider web, for lack of a better visual, of interconnection between all things that are living by the broadest definition, that have energy, that have vibratory rates. The only items that have no vibratory rate and may be considered dead are those that are at least today, are at or below absolute zero, where because of temperature, there is no measurable vibratory rate. And in the future, that may be proven to be an error as well. So if you think about it, the ability to access other time and space or access information through and see what can and may happen is not beyond the realm of a probability, possibility, and really is something that is able to be concluded. But more importantly, the future, since it is so uncertain, it's just a multitude or an infinite number of paths. It's more about making use of the interconnection that we have between all that is around us and using that force, using that relationship, again, to create the highest and the best, and applying that and applying a mental antidote in a way that brings the most beauty, love, and power into existence for us and for those around us and for the world that we're in. This is not insignificant, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that this is paramount to why we do what we do, and then calls us into action to be able to be a positive force in the world. Our world's really messed up right now. We're going through a cycle that has occurred before and will occur again. That does not mean that we give up and we lose hope. It actually means that we are called to make these changes and to move forward. So, chapter 5, self-healing, serial lesson 99. This is a challenging serial lesson and a challenging chapter. What it points out are three major points. First is that our physical environment is a critical element to consider. And this is page 86 through 87 in the Green Book. Now, what does that mean? That really means that the food we eat, the environment that we find ourselves in, being it stressful, being it healthy, being unhealthy, being positive, or being something that is negative, impacts us and is a controllable situation that must be observed and understood. I found that on a period of, using the last point, self-reflection and anticipation through meditation has lowered my blood pressure by 30 points. My doctor was kind of confounded of looking at my past and looking at my present. But by changing my environment, by moving as I did, by changing the things that I could change and managing those situations, I'm learning, haven't completed it, but I'm learning to manage my stress. I'm eating healthier. I'm exercising in a constructive way that is helping me to be more effective and efficient. Also, that's leading me to be able to use rallying forces for change in myself and in those that I am involved with or come into contact with. A simple action of a smile, a simple action of making a wish, if you will, for a positive outcome or setting the intention. I have a series of meetings that I have to go to next week. and it's an in-person thing. So it's something that's a little disconcerting. But yet, as I anticipate, as I look at what the positive outcomes can and will be, I'm not only more at peace, and then I'm also taking the precautions that will keep me safe. I'm a strong believer in self-reflection and anticipation, 97 through 99. This is something that, for me, has turned out to be a lifesaver. I pretty much have been able to continually have a morning meditation, even if it's only 15 minutes, and to be able to focus on the cleansing, the resting, the focus that opens me to the positive and accentuates that which is constructive, rather than my predisposition for worry and for fretting. These abilities then to rally these forces that are talked about on page 89 and 90 helps to change the individual, helps me to change. And it's a marathon. It is not a 100-meter race. This is something that we're looking for long-term change, which can occur and will occur if we put the effort into it. It is not something that will change overnight. Just won't. But it will change over a period of time. And the challenge is to draw yourself and put yourself in an environment and in a position where this can occur, and you have the tools to do it. This serial lesson number 99, chapter 5, gives you the insight to be able to find that formula that will help you, because what works for me may not work for you. Likely likely it won't. You will experiment and you will find how you can change and how you can grow and learn. Serial lesson 6, attaining realization. Now, this was written in, if you go back and look at this serial lesson number 100, chapter 6, it was written in 1939. This is the height of the psychoanalytic, Freudian, psychological emphasis. Psychoanalysis, what's deemed to be psychoanalysis, is something that takes a therapist decades, years to be able to learn and to effectively work. It is something that is hard to do by yourself and can lead to becoming lost. Lost in what may be those negative things that are occurring in your life, or what things have occurred in your past. This is why I say it's problematic and must be considered in perspective. The psychoanalytic procedure that this is based upon has not been discredited, but certainly has been brought into perspective. And if there are mental health issues, and we all, 1 out of 5 Americans at some point in their lives are experiencing a discernible mental health event, it's likely that everyone will at some point in their life, have this experience. It's best to work with someone, if not a trained professional, at least someone else that can help you gain perspective, that can help you look at and reflect upon events. And if it comes that you see that there are significant events in your past or that you're currently dealing with, it is important to seek professional assistance. These are things that may not be able to be solved or addressed effectively by yourself. But having said that, on page 115, it is important that whatever whatever type of activity you engage in self-analysis and reflection, that it builds your self-worth and doesn't harm it or doesn't suppress it. One way that you could measure the effectiveness, or if you will, the constructive nature of self-analysis is your self-worth increased or has it decreased? If you're seeing a steady decline in how you feel about yourself and your ability to move forward, then that's usually the time that you want to really engage a professional and to work with them to get over the hump. Also, that you should start seeing success in other areas of your life. Page 116 through 119 categorizes these extremely well. Look and see, and this is why sometimes journaling can be very helpful, because you objectively record information such that you can go back and then reflect on it as you move forward. Our memory sometimes is selective in terms of being able to recall events as they were or feelings as they were. When you write it down, not only does it get out of your head and become more tangible, it gives you a point of reference at a time, a specific time, to say, this is what I was dealing with and this is how I was feeling about myself or about areas of my life. So while we have methodology to be able to address these issues, and again, you want to look and see if these are consistent within what you find out about yourself through the tarot and through your chart, it's also important to understand that there may be time to bring a third party in to assist and to help. Chapter 7, Serial Lesson 101, Giving Absent Treatments. Now, this is real interesting because also during this time that it was written, we see the rise and probably some of the heights of groups such as the Science of Mind, of others that believe in spiritual healing is the nature and the prerequisite for physical healing. I believe that there's elements of truth with this, but particularly when there's injuries or accidents or other organic causes, there may or may not be a spiritual aspect to that. And once you have treated for every of the spiritual aspect in yourself or within others, it's looking again to say, at what point do I need to consult a third party? Again, it goes into this point that space, time, and the creation itself are all interconnected on the subatomic level. This cannot be overstated. These interconnected spaces or these interconnections mean that we can have an impact on another, even though we may not be physically present, or on a situation. Again, setting a group of people setting intention for a certain outcome can influence, if not change, that outcome. And again, within Lynn McTaggart's book, you can see actual experiments that were done and the effects that were had. Also note on page 127 and 131, planetary impacts and influences. So as all information is contained within the natal chart and the progress chart, triggered by what would be then more current information in terms of what's happening now. The natal is the underlying personality, the progressed is the influence as we age, and then we see everything else being a trigger to that. Also, something that's interesting that will be dealt with in much more detail in future books is the element of psychic forces. This is an area that you can become very easily distracted in, and I caution you or encourage you to wait. That this whole element that will be discussed. Matter of fact, there's a couple of courses that will be devoted to these, dealing with these psychic forces. We'll give you much more information and will allow you to be able to understand this topic more rather than being teased about it now or possibly becoming distracted. I put this quote by Dr. Albert Schweitzer in just because I think it goes with the theme of this overall course. I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. I really, again, admonish you to find an outlet for service. One reason for that, and probably the principal reason, is it helps keep us balanced and not be so egocentric. The more that we can impact the lives of others in a positive way, the more that we benefit. And if you are not currently participating in some action or activity to another group, I strongly encourage you to take a look at the church and or find something local that you can participate in and have a significant impact on. Use the tools that are given. Now, in the coming months, you're going to be really walloped by the significance and the impact that the natal chart and the progress chart can have. This will also be the time that you want to take a look at acquiring the computer program for creating charts that's offered by the church. It is specifically designed for the way that we do. And while there are many good chart programs out there, this one is geared specifically for our approach, which is fairly unique. Others talk about it. We're pretty much the only ones that do it in terms of using astrodynes. So I encourage you to, as you begin and look into book 10, volume 1, that you acquire that program, but it is also important to understand the foundation. All right, so I wanted to leave a little more time for questions and answers today because, again, this material is a prerequisite and a setting up to going into something in the next 2 months that will be very technical. And so your mindset going into this is going to be critical, understanding that it is a process that does take some time, but that the rewards and the outcome that you will find will continue to be and grow. So if we can, Yvette, could you also then do the closing ceremony for us?
I'm here if you'd like me to.
Yes, okay, that would be fine. Thank you.
All
That'd
right.
be good. That would be good because I have a train coming through.
Uh-oh.
All right, eternal brothers and sisters, we are now about to close the Church of Light meeting in the customary manner. And in so doing, let us consider seriously the kind of life it is fitting a brother and a sister of the light should live. We must each leave this meeting to go about our daily duties, but unless we take with us some higher thought and nobler purpose, we have spent our time here in vain. For knowledge lacking goodness leads to naught but self-undoing. Each brother and sister has pledged himself or herself to put forth an effort to alleviate physical and mental suffering, to dispel ignorance, and to spread truth. Therefore, even as we would be helped by those of our religion who are more enlightened, let us make every effort to assist others, and let each so conduct himself or herself to be an example of moral purity, radiating life, light, and love. I will pronounce the benediction. O thou eternal Spirit, in whom we live, move, breathe, and have our being, dismiss us now with thy blessings. And as we travel along our several ways, let ministers of thine guard our footsteps and light our pathway, that we may not stumble in our blindness. From our hearts, we thank those who have assisted in our researches And now as we depart, we consecrate our efforts to the cause of truth and beneficence. So shall it be.
All right, so let's go ahead and discontinue the recording. And what questions do you have?